Today we're being laughed at all over the world. You're paying the price for Kamala's liberal extremism at the gas pump, at the grocery counter, and on your mortgage bill, and on everything else. How about your car insurance? How's that doing? Not too good, right? I saw today it's up like 82%. We're not going to let this incompetent socialist lunatic keep breaking our economy for four.
Build about policy issues, talking about the economy. We certainly saw the president, and I think you could tell when he was reading what was in the prompter, scripted related to the economy, talking about his first term in office, a contrast that when you talk to Trump campaign advisors, they feel like is a winning message for them. And up until the last couple of days, polling seemed to bear that out, particularly against President Biden. A couple things off the top before I bring the panel in. It was true there was significant growth during the Trump administration. There's also been significant growth during the Biden administration. So there's been no jobs or losing jobs throughout the Biden administration. They've created over 15 million jobs. He continues to say he had the largest tax cut in history. It was certainly a significant legislative achievement for the former president and Republicans in the House and the Senate. It was nowhere near the largest tax cut in history. But more than anything else, he underscored that there are very clear differences in terms of the economic priorities, the economic policies, and the economic messages from the two candidates here. We should hear more from Kamala Harris, the vice president, when she speaks in North Carolina about the economy on Friday. I do want to bring my panel in. And Mark, I want to start with you. You were in that. Oh, actually, we're going to start with Daniel Dale. Daniel, he's with me to fact check some of what we heard. There was definitely policy. There was also stuff about laughing. What stood out to you, Daniel?
Yeah, so you did some of the fact checking yourself, and I appreciate that. Everything you said was right. There were a bunch of claims that I think a lot of people would question, but that are subjective or uncheckable. He claimed California, where a whole lot of people happily live, is unlivable. He claimed that we're a banana republic in a third world country. I think a lot of people would dispute that. But also a whole bunch of claims, Phil, that were just flat out false. He again said that Kamala Harris was made the border czar, put by President Biden in charge of the border. That didn't happen. In reality, she was given a much more limited immigration-related assignment tasked with dealing with the so-called root causes of migration in certain Central American countries. He repeated his claim that she's allowed 20 million people into the country. Aside from the question of her own role and responsibility, the total number of border so-called encounters under Biden and Harris is 10 million, and far from all of those people were actually allowed in. That includes the people who were expelled from the country upon arriving at the border. He boasted of how good African-American poverty, the poverty level, was during his administration. He didn't mention it's actually fallen to a lower level, a new record, beating the Trump-era record under Biden and Harris. He called switching candidates in the Democratic primary a minor form of cheating. It's not a form of cheating at all. It's allowed completely within the law and the rules. And he spoke of how the Inflation Reduction Act, he said, gave us record inflation. The U.S. has never had record inflation under Biden and Harris. Even the Biden-Harris peak of 9.1% was about a 40-year high, nowhere near the all-time high of about 23.7%. And that 9.1% number has come way down since then. It's now 2.9%. So whatever peak it reached before, nowhere near it now. And finally, he spoke of so-called very good polls for him coming out right now and claimed we're leading. He might be seeing private numbers we're not seeing, but in the national averages of public polling, he's not leading. He's now trailing. Phil?
All right, Daniel Dale, I apologize for stepping on you. I'm glad I didn't get anything wrong.
No problem at all.
Always appreciate your expertise, Daniel Dale, for us. I want to bring in CNN anchor Julia Chatterley. Julia, we heard the elements of the economic message that you want, the campaign advisors certainly want the former president to be talking about. What did you make in terms of the policy that we heard about?
It's a good question. The good news is we're not going into a Great Depression this week, so he has changed the tune on that, but we're also not a third world nation. We have the largest economy in the world. We're in the top 10 in terms of growth per person, so we'll just debunk that. He talked a lot about real income shifts and drops. He's long complained that the Biden administration would destroy, quote, the oil and gas sector. Yet if you look at the data, actually our oil and gas production are near records. So even if it does increase under a future President Trump administration, it's not been harmed by what we've seen by Biden, even if it does improve going forward. One of the things he did say, which was true, he talked about credit card debt being at record highs. The Federal Reserve Bank of New York says that U.S. consumers are now carrying more debt than ever before. It's just over $1.1 trillion for the second quarter. 50% of U.S. credit card holders are carrying a balance. That was 44% if you go back to Jan, and that's actually a rate not seen since before the pandemic. Delinquencies are also at the highest point since 2011. 9/11. But where was the policy to tackle any of these things? He has changed his tune in terms of pointing out some of the weaknesses, I think, for the Biden administration, but again, tackling them himself, still lacking details.
Von Hilliard, you are at a Trump rally that they're not calling a rally because it's not the size of a rally, and it seems they don't want their rally to be compared to the size of the Harris-Walz rallies. But tell me what this event is. Is it people in a venue with a podium in the middle and remarks planned?
Nicole, this event is being billed by the campaign as an economic address. It's not a rally, despite it looking like one. And I just want to be clear. The campaign has structured events like this frequently over the years, right? The campaign sometimes has one idea of a theme, but then so often Donald Trump, he may refer to a few lines, in this instance about the economy, but then, as he so often does, go off a script here. This one is being billed as an economic address, frankly, after 3 weeks in which Donald Trump and his campaign have lacked a theme, have lacked focus. You heard Nikki Haley there bemoan the fact, but it's not just Nikki Haley. It's strong Donald Trump acolytes, those who have been ride or die with him through the years, including in these last months, who have been, I would say, gloomy over the prospects of this campaign, acknowledging that not only has Donald Trump suggested that the crowd size for Kamala Harris has been fake or questioned her race, but also even the message that he has attempted to deliver on policy and substance has been fraught and difficult. If you just take the economy, right? You have inflation here that is under 3% now. Compare that in 2022, when in October, right before those midterm elections, Republicans were largely running on the same message. At the time, inflation was 7.5 percentage points. If you look at the border crisis, right, there was a record number of migrants who were crossing into the United States in October of 22. Compare that to what is in place right here in the summer of 2024. It is a record low during the Biden administration for the number of border encounters by the Border and Patrol. And so this, for the Trump campaign, is coming at a time, another example, violent crime. We have seen year over year violent crime, homicides drop in major American cities here. So for Donald Trump, it is not just a contrast in terms of the visuals between the Harris campaign and his campaign, but also on policy, which his own team wants him to get back to. Right now, this is a difficult time because he wants to put the focus on the Biden-Harris administration, yet some of the numbers and some of the messaging that he wanted to run on here in these final 3 months are facing difficult numbers and difficult realities based off of pure statistics at this point.
It's so interesting, Vaughn, because what is covered is that his advisors and his allies want him to get back to policy. But what you're reporting and what the data bears out is that on the issues where he feels like he has an advantage, the facts don't line up the way they might have at another point in time. What's Plan C?
I think it's a good question, Nicole, because let's be very clear. This campaign infrastructure that he has surrounded himself with, Susie Wiles, Chris LaCivita, Jason Miller, these are key campaign advisors that have allowed him to run on whatever message he has chosen to run on. Sometimes that means even standing on stage as January 6th defendants sing the Star Spangled Banner, right? It has meant calling those individuals patriots, right? It has allowed him to bemoan the state of the migrant crisis and the number of migrants that are coming into the United States and that they're stealing your jobs. They're coming from insane asylums. They have allowed Donald Trump to run his own campaign messaging for the better part of almost 2 years now. And up until this point, it won him a Republican primary, and up against Joe Biden, it had him leading in polling in battleground states. But that's not the race he's running against now. And I think that is what all of us that are reporting on Donald Trump are looking at, but also those who are allied with him. I was just talking with somebody who is connected to that world who was questioning where do they go from here, because they could very well try to fire one of the key campaign advisors. But what does that do them? Because organizationally, infrastructure wise, they have implemented what Donald Trump wanted in terms of a ground game operation, in terms of a focus on election integrity and putting resources towards being able to challenge election laws and potentially in the weeks after the election, challenge, voting tabulation. And so right now, this campaign, they have done what Donald Trump has wanted. And I think it is a question now, where does Donald Trump want his camp? Where does he want him to go? And I think this last week is an indication. And it's a question is, could anybody, Kellyanne Conway, could somebody get into his ear at this point and convince him that there is a different path forward?
Matt Dowd, I come to you because I'm wondering how much that matters, right? I mean, it looks like there's been a structural reshaping of the race.
Small rally, a mini rally, that almost seems like, an oxymoron in Trump's world, Stephanie. Is that something that he can thrive in?
Well, the short answer is no. I imagine he will do some of them, and maybe for a week he'll, attempt to stay on message. It depends on how tough his staff is being with him, but he will get bored. He doesn't like those small events. He never has, and he will be demanding to do a large rally sooner rather than later. And it's funny because everything I've been hearing is, all these people are saying to do the best version of himself. They want him to be a fake version of himself. Donald Trump is a bombastic narcissist, and he loves attention, and he is not going to be happy, being quiet or being on message. It's not who he is. And so they all know that. Look, we did this a million times. We did it in 2016. We did it throughout our time in the White House. We were always trying to keep him on message. Everybody was frustrated all the time. We went through tons and tons of staff. You all know that. And this is just, version 27 now.
So, folks, they're just giving up on him. Trump attorneys have given up on him. We've seen some of that. Trump staffers, Trump employees, Trump people, like people in Trump world, like Trump surrogates. These people are either employees of Trump or have been employed, have been deployed and employed by even by third parties to be cheerleaders for Donald Trump. And this has been the last straw for a lot of them. And even if some of them have given up on Trump before, many of them were still suggesting he could win. So not only have they quit on Trump, some of them have quit long ago on Trump. They've quit on even the idea that he's being successful. I've seen some former Trumpers say, I don't want the man to win. I want him to lose. I'm working hard for him to lose. But when Biden was still in there saying, unfortunately, I'm still backing him to win in the sense that, like, I'm picking a result. Right? Like, if the result was today, I feel he's going to win, God forbid, right? Now those people are giving up on him. Because what's clear is that he sounds unhinged, and even from the dum-dums, who don't give good advice very often, they are giving him some decent advice, and he's not taking it. And the MAGA dum-dums around him, the staffers, the employees, all of that, are saying, you gotta focus on the issues. Again, I know that Trump doesn't have any real policy, and the policy he does have is terrible. But there are a lot of people out there who could hypothetically blame Harris for the border, hypothetically blame Harris for inflation, hypothetically blame her for any number of issues that they're not exactly happy about, whether or not she or even Biden can be blamed for those issues, and whether or not Donald Trump is proposing anything that would make those issues better, or even just not worse. But voters can still be convinced, even of falsehoods. But he's not even doing that. And so everyone is saying that he is blowing any chance he had. And you could hear it in that speech tonight. And so immediately after that speech, after that rally, whatever you want to call it or not call it, he has just convinced even more people he doesn't have it anymore.